Hi, everybody. I'm Beatty Combrettos, and welcome again to the Ask Beatty Show. And these days, my friends, we certainly need all the help that we can possibly get. And as I say to my patients and I say to my audiences, that we really all need to give ourselves permission to ask for help when life starts to feel really, really out of control. And when we think about it, pre-COVID-19, let's look at the real statistics, the mental health statistics in this country. For example, there are 350 million people worldwide, and these are estimated statistics, and I'm sure that these numbers are a little low, that are suffering from depression. 16 million adults in the United States, and I'm sure that that statistic, too, has gone up in the last number of months, which translates into 1 in 5 Americans are suffering from depression. 40 million adults suffering from a variety of anxiety disorders. And if we're looking at suicide, not a pleasant subject to talk about, but again, we have to really be real and get real and look at what is happening in this country. Suicide attempts by young people quadrupled over the past 6 years. And since 2011, there has been a 40% increase nationally for self-poisoning by young people. Suicide, the rate of suicide between the ages of 10 and 24, when you think of 10-year-old little kids who feel so desperate for a variety of reasons, who are thinking about and who are actually attempting suicide, that rate has increased by 56%. Homicides by intimate partner violence increased by 26% from 2010 to 2017. Four women killed every single day by their so-called intimate partners. If we're looking at the divorce rate in this country, 48% of first marriages end in divorce. For second marriage, and I think a lot of people are surprised by this statistic, 67% of couples who are marrying for the second time end up in a divorce court in front of a judge. And what about third marriages? You know, we hope that if we are unsuccessful in our first marriage and unsuccessful in a second marriage, that hopefully we really learn something about healthy relationships, learn something about assessing who's right for you and who's wrong for you. Of course, that's what my research and that's what my book, For Better for Worse Forever, Discover the Path to Lasting Love, is about. But the reality, my friends, the divorce rate for third marriages is 74%. And looking at what's happened, the impact of the coronavirus on all of us, on our jobs, on our health, not just our emotional and psychological health, but on our physical health, our social relationships, our mental health. People are worrying, and they are worrying every single day. Am I going to be able to pay my rent, buy food? Basic things that for a lot of people we don't typically worry about. What happens if I get sick? What if I don't have health care? And so many hundreds of thousands of Americans do not have access to health care. Am I going to lose my business and my job? Homeschooling, what's going to be happening with the kids? Am I going to have to somehow find a way to juggle working and the possibility of homeschooling? What about the social isolation? For so many people, even though it is starting to change, we miss the hugs, the kisses, the closeness that we typically have with friends, with colleagues, and with relatives. Something else that's happening, and, you know, I see this actually as a positive thing. There have been calls to mental health helplines, and they are surging. And I think it is a good thing. And we're going to be talking a lot about mental health today with my guests from the Open Center and from Operation Warrior Shield. I think that people hopefully are giving themselves permission to reach out and ask for help. And the helplines, the numbers of people calling, I mean, they have really, really increased. People are anxious. People are scared. People are angry. People are depressed. And what we've been finding is that 50% of those working from home, working remotely, feel more anxious, feel more and more disconnected, which, of course, we can certainly understand. And other things, statistics that we are finding is that Americans are now doubling down on some of their worst habits to cope with emotional stress related to the virus. Alcohol sales have jumped, with spirits up 75%, wine up 66%, beer 42%. Cannabis reached an all-time high in March, even though experts have warned us that marijuana and vaping and tobacco may increase the risk of the virus. People are exercising less and eating more. And there's real concern about having long-term effects of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety. But if you find yourself, as many people do, that you are judging your emotions or responses, just remind yourself that your feelings are normal and justified. And of course, my mantra has always been that we need to really acknowledge and address and resolve as best as we possibly can the things that are getting in the way of our lives and our relationships. And when you're feeling overwhelmed, try to focus on breathing and meditation instead of reaching for your phone. And I think it's really important for all of us to set a news and social media cutoff time. Do not glue yourself to the television set, 24 hours a day. We can check in a couple of times and find out what's going on and what phase is now being implemented. And we're really needing to find a way to have a healthy routine for ourselves, which of course includes exercise and eating well and social connection. And I look at this crisis, as I think a lot of people do, it's an opportunity for all of us to reevaluate our lives and our relationships and our lifestyles and find a way to possibly reset the things that have not been working for us pre-COVID-19. But before we really move into the program today, which is going to be talking with people from the Open Center here in New York City and Operation Warrior Shield, I want you to know, and I don't know how many of you are aware, that today is a national call for mourning and fasting. And I want to read you a summary of a message from Dr. Reverend William Barber, who is the founder with Reverend Liz Fioris of the Poor People's Campaign, which is a national call for a moral revival. And God knows we need a moral revival in this country. So here are a few words from Dr. Barber. He says, like many of you, I have heard George Floyd's cry, I can't breathe, and Mama, I love you, on the recording of his lynching in the streets of Minneapolis. Sound familiar? Yes. Thousands of people, black, white, brown, gay, straight, and trans, have taken to the streets to cry out against systemic racism. Let's remember, however, that before COVID-19, 250,000 people in this country were dying every year from poverty in the richest nation in the world. So Dr. Barber is asking people to stop where you are, where all of us are, for 8 minutes, and 46 seconds in silence in honor of the time George Floyd had the literal knee of the state on his neck. And this is a time when hopefully death brings people to life. And I hope that you are all going to take this in. Well, today, as I say, we're going to be talking with people from the Open Center and from Operation Warrior Shield. But before I introduce my guests, I want to thank my good friend Ann Akers, who is not able to join us today, but who has worked tirelessly for our veterans and for bringing together our speakers today. And Ann has worked in the veteran space for many years as an advocate for female veterans and now is a special advisor to Operation Warrior Shield, where she spearheaded an innovative pilot project offering no-cost holistic wellness services to our veterans, and most recently connecting with the Open Center to expand and grow these services into newer and larger communities, including veterans, first responders, frontline workers, and others suffering from stress and anxiety during COVID. And thank you again, Anne, for all the wonderful, wonderful work that you do in all kinds of ways for many, many different organizations. But my first guest today is Echloeman, who is the founder and chairman of Operation Warrior Shield and is a retired Chief Master Sergeant from the New York Air National Guard and a Vietnam Marine veteran. He has served his country for 28 years and continues to serve assisting veterans and first responders who may be suffering from the effects of stress, which can undoubtedly lead to PTSD. So welcome, Ed.
And thank you so very much. Where did the time go since the last time we spoke?
I miss you. I really do miss you. And hopefully we're going to be able soon enough to see each other in person. So for people who are unaware about the amazing work that you are doing through Operation Warrior Shield, tell us very, very briefly about Operation Warrior Shield and your partnership with the Open Center.
Well, Operation Warrior Shield provides comprehensive programs for our heroes, first responders, and their families, of course. Let's not forget them. And we're focused on some form of transition, including health and wellness, prevention of homelessness, and more or less, we have a great connection with the community, which has so many resources available for veterans and first responders. And again, the emphasis that we wish to do is to help heal those hidden wounds and also to build resilience for stress. And I think what the last 11 or 12 days, we have seen enough stress that could last anyone in their lifetime. And what has happened to our communities throughout the country really needs to be identified with a healing process. And that's why I was so happy that we have people like Ann and some of the other people who will be speaking today on your great show that will talk about why it's important to be there, not only for those that keep us out of harm's way or for our first responders, but also how to build a better community.
Isn't that the truth? Have you found, Ed, that there's been an increase, a significant increase in the numbers of people who are contacting you?
I would say no, but I have been working very closely with organizations of which they contact the organization and then they contact us. And yes, to answer your question, Ross will address how many contacts, how many people have called the Open Center, and to answer that question, we have had a lot of calls.
Things that I try to impart to people every single week. In fact, today is the 301st Ask Beatty show here on the Progressive Radio Network, is to really give ourselves permission. And I think that so many people are still very reluctant to access mental health services, and they see it as a weakness. And of course, I continue to try to convince people that it is not a weakness, it is a strength. When we find that life is just really, really becoming too much for us to deal with, on our own. But again, I want to thank you so much, and Operation Warrior Shield, and of course your partnership with the Open Center, because, in the final analysis, what really matters, it's about relationships, it's about mental health, it's about cooperation, it's about working together to really try to make this world a better place. And it's interesting. I had a session with a patient of mine this morning, and I was trying to convince her that it was not about the money and the bigger and the better, but that it was really, in the final analysis, about love and about collaboration. So, Ed, if you want to stay on the line, that would be wonderful. But right now, I want to, and it's really wonderful to hear your voice. I want to introduce Ross Guttler. And Ross, I cannot wait to meet you in person. And Ross is the Chief Executive Officer of the Open Center here in Beatty, which is one of America's most respected centers for holistic healing and global education. And prior to joining the Open Center, Ross was the Chief Operating Officer for Global Treehouse, a Tokyo-based concept combining meditation, creativity, and problem-solving for Fortune 500 executive teams. So welcome, Ross Guttler.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and been looking forward to this for a while. I know we've had some rescheduling.
I know, and I'm really looking forward to coming to the Open Center and meeting you and meeting Brett and meeting everybody in person. But for those people who may not be aware of the Open Center and your programs, and of course the New Yorkers for New York initiative, educate us all about all of this.
Well, I think in really quickly, the Open Center itself, we are the oldest urban holistic center in the United States. We've been around for over 36 years. We used to be down in Soho, and now we're in Midtown on 30th and Madison. Although, at the moment, we exist across the world because none of the centers and folks that do what we do are having any in-person experiences right now, which, we're very sad about, and we are excited about when that time, when we can change that. But in the meantime, we are doing everything online, offering almost all our programs online, and they are in the sectors of personal growth and spiritual practice and mindfulness, other types of holistic health, whether it's nutrition or energy-based healing modalities. We really cover a lot. Breadth and depth are both two things that are important to us, as well as accessibility. And, I think accessibility to a diverse audience from a financial standpoint, from an economic standpoint, and from an ethnicity and cultural standpoint is obviously really relevant right now. And it's something that's important to us. And I'm sure it's something we'll probably, I don't know if that's the point of the conversation, but it's something we'll address on the call today. New Yorkers for New York is our free resource that we created, certainly with our relationship with Ed and Ann and Operation Warrior Shield in mind, because they just really are one of our most important partners. But the idea was, okay, how do we offer what the Open Center's been doing for 36 years? How do we offer that to the people most in need? And this was 3 months ago. And those
Right.
people were our first responders and our frontline and essential workers. And so we did that in a matter of probably 2 weeks. We went from creation to launching it. And since then, there have been thousands and thousands of thousands of people using it. And we're excited about that. And we're also excited about what the evolution of it will be, so that it always stays relevant to the needs of New York City.
Mm-hmm. So people who are feeling overwhelmed and stressed, as so many people are, over and above the first responders, how do they go? I mean, you say that I know that there is a toolkit. How do they go about figuring out what resources to access, what the best resources for them would be for their particular needs, their particular stress, their particular perhaps depression and anxiety and PTSD? How does it all work? So somebody hears our conversation and they go where?
Yeah, NewYorkersForNewYork.org is the website for this toolkit, and it's New Yorkers plural and it's for spelled out FOR NewYork.org. You can also access it on Open Center's website, which is just opencenter.org, and we're actually about to release a new website here in a few weeks, so we're really excited about that. So that's how you access the toolkit itself. I think you just brought up a really interesting question, though, around how does someone know what is the right modality or healing practice for them? And
right.
And Beatty, it's a question I've thought a lot about. My father is a family practice doctor, and I've thought, who is the family practice doctor? Who is the analogous position of that in the spiritual practice community, where you can say, oh, what practice is right for me? Is it acupuncture? Is it reflexology? Is it
right.
Buddhism? Is it, there's so many different things. And I guess there are holistic doctors you can go to that have an understanding of multiple practices, and they would be helpful. But I don't think that true family practice doctor position exists. Interestingly, though, or maybe why the need there isn't as great is because I think more in Western medicine, something specific is a solution for something. Like a certain pathology has a certain medication that's used to heal it. In our world, let's say you're depressed. There's a lot of things that can help depression.
Right.
Frankly, almost everything we do can help depression. So I think there's not an exact solution that in Western medicine you tend to see. So maybe the role isn't quite as necessary. But I think it's a really cool question to think about.
Well, as you say, in Western medicine, particularly here in the United States, I'm Canadian, and I would like to think that we are definitely a kinder, gentler country where people don't have to worry about health care and where there is a lot easier access for physical and, of course, mental health as well. I mean, here it's about, let's give you another prescription. I mean, I mentioned...
Right.
Very frequently about patients of mine who are seeing psychiatrists here in New York for medication. One woman that I see takes 5 different sleeping medications. And I've said to her, I said, listen, there's something wrong here. What about looking at a more holistic way of dealing with the fact that you can't go to sleep? But her psychiatrist is very happy to prescribe yet another sleeping pill, another kind of, anti-anxiety, which is why, it's so exciting. It's so exciting for me, as a psychotherapist and sex therapist, to hear about all of the different modalities that you offer at the Open Center. And as you mentioned about, family practice people, I mean, how many people go to doctors, and if they're really lucky, they may have a 10 or 15 minute visit. And rarely is mental health a subject that is talked about. Sex is virtually never talked about. And, so we just go from prescription to prescription. And I just think it's so important, as you mentioned, that there are so many different things that we can do, including exercise and diet and meditation and breathing, and the list goes on. And yet so many people are really unaware and are left to their own devices to deal with the stress and the depression and the anxiety and all of the different problems that people, particularly these days, are facing. Have you found, and this is a question that I asked to Ed, have you found that significantly more numbers of people are reaching out to you and are also reaching out to the tool kits that you're offering?
Well, we've only had it out there for a matter of, I don't know, I think it's been less than 2 months. So I don't follow the numbers day to day. I think we had a flurry out of the gate, and then we'll have good weeks and relatively weaker weeks. But I think I don't think we know what necessarily causes them outside of how much are we promoting it ourselves. I think, and I was listening to your conversation with Ed, there are a lot of tools out there right now. One thing that I think heartens me is to see how many people, let's say mid-March, how many organizations rolled an offer out for free, which is awesome, and for us, we didn't look at it and say, oh, darn, there's people creating competition for us. We thought, great, the more that is out there, the better. Now, at some point, you need to know they exist, and you need to not have almost a fear of too many to select from. This goes back to your point of how do you know what's right for you. I think one thing that makes our New Yorkers for New York toolkit exceptional is its multimodality. And, the phrase you just mentioned. It's not only multimodality, but all the modalities, all the videos that we have on there are designed to be done in a really short period of time. Because one thing we understood is some people don't want to meditate. Some people don't want to do breath work. Some people don't want to do yoga, right, but they may be interested in some other form. And they also don't have 2 hours to learn a new modality. They may have 15 or 20 minutes. And so we designed around that. And we think that's a feature for ours that really separates it from some of the other offerings out there. But again, we're a nonprofit, so we're just trying to do good, and we're happy to see good wherever it comes from any corner, whether it's the Open Center or not.
Well, you're certainly doing good. And, as I'm sitting here, of course, I'm now doing the show from home. Haven't been to the Progressive Radio Network studio now in a couple of months. But, I was wondering, has the mainstream media given you, the Open Center, and the Operation Warrior Shield, the kind of publicity that you really need so that millions of people in this area are going to be aware of what's available, of what you're doing, of the possible services and resources that they actually can access for free? I'm really wondering, have they picked up on this and partnered with you to get the messages out?
Oh, boy, that feels like a dangerous topic for me to go.
I ask the tough questions. For me, it's all about being real. It's about being authentic. It's about being honest.
I think without going on a long monologue about media, we've had some media cover it. I think the issue here would be what is the media's job? Is it truly to promote impact, or is it to get eyeballs? And it's obviously the latter. And so the media is going to want to look at things that are clickable and have certain names. And while we are the oldest urban holistic center in the United States, which carries a lot of weight, I don't think we're that broadly known, where you can pick up on some of the other national and global companies that are throwing out free offerings that probably have bigger names than we do, even though in our industry we have big names. I think without saying too much there, I understand that the media is a business and they got to keep their lights on too. So they're going to cover things that keep the lights on, and not necessarily measure it by, okay, let's cover things that have the most impact.
Well, I think, Ross, you're being very, very lovely and politically correct. In fact, I was having this very same conversation with my husband, Jim Bretos, who's a criminologist and sociologist, and he has a television show, The Radical Imagination. And we were, somewhat tongue-in-cheek yesterday. We were talking about how it's the followers and it's the celebrity, and if you could get a Hollywood star to, really come on board and let people know what an amazing operation the Open Center is. I mean, as sick as that sounds, I think that is a reality where, we need spokespeople with the names and with the celebrity. It doesn't matter whether there is the content. It doesn't matter whether or not there's the substance. Because, with what you're doing, I mean, I heard about your initiative, of course, from Ann Akers, and heard nothing, basically, on television about, this amazing initiative, which is why I really wanted to try and help you really get the word out. And I should just let you know that tomorrow morning, I mean, the show is live right now, but tomorrow morning there is an archive. It's Ask Beatty Podbean, where you're going to be able to use the entire show in whatever kind of publicity, that you want, that is going to be able to be helpful to help get this word out. Because, I mean, this show is heard around the world, but I think that people really need to hear about this, people who are living here, in New York, and it is going to be interesting to see, later on when you track the numbers, because you're offering a gift. I mean, there's no question about that. But if people don't know about the gift, it makes it, very difficult to be able to really, maximize, the wonderful work that you're doing. So I guess we're going to have to, in a couple of months, take a look at what's happened as a result concretely with your initiative, and how many thousands of people hopefully have been positively impacted by the toolkit and, the various different other programs that you're offering.
Well, Beatty, I just want to say again, I mean, thank you. I'm getting emotional just sitting here and listening to you and your passion and your desire to help us, which in turn is helping a lot of other people. So, you're like a leverage play of helping thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of really people through us is just one of the channels you help people through. And I just want to seriously take more than a second to thank you.
Well, it is my pleasure. And this is not going to be a one-shot deal, Ross, okay? I mean, for me, I've been a practicing psychotherapist now for over 35 years. And, every time I say it, it's like, oh, my God, where is the time gone? And, I've been committed to mental health, of course, for my entire career. And even before, I became a psychotherapist, and I want to make it okay for people to reach out and ask for help. And I'm hoping, I try to take a look at what a crisis does to us, and it's an opportunity, as I've said, to reevaluate, to reset, and hopefully after this pandemic crisis passes, that people are still going to give themselves permission and get the necessary help that they need, because pre-COVID-19, I mean, we're still not doing well in this country when it comes to mental health. I don't know whether you heard all these statistics that I was citing at the beginning of the show. But people are stressed. People are suffering. And I think that whatever it is that we can possibly do to encourage people and make it okay to reach out and ask for help. I mean, it's a continuous kind of a process that obviously you're involved in, I'm involved in, and of course a lot of other organizations are committed to as well. So
Beatty,
after the crisis, Ross, I want to ask you this.
I did listen to the beginning. I don't know if I caught all your stats. The stat that always, I don't want to say bothers me, that always sticks out to me is one I talk about with my dad, which is I think it is 60+% of all physical issues, sickness issues stem from psychology, stem from stress and anxiety and other mental health issues. And to really just sit there and think about well over half of the things that people are going and seeing our healthcare system for start in the mind and the heart and the soul and the spirit. And yet, I mean, I don't know what percent we actually spend on solving those issues. My guess is, a fraction of a percent. And I've had that conversation with my dad, and I said, if we spent more resources and more focus and had more awareness around these issues, people like you would be out of a job. And he was like, yeah, I know, but that would be a good thing. We would do other stuff. I mean, we wouldn't be as needed. Like the goal is not to have more doctors or have more police or anything. The goal is just to have a safer, peacer society. And so it's how do we get there? And you said something, and I think that's a longer conversation. And maybe if you want to have another show on it, I'd be open to it. Is you mentioned the word moral revival earlier.
Yes.
I would love to hear from you. And maybe it's at the end of the call, like, what does that look like? What is that? I mean, what a conversation.
We are very much involved with the Poor People's Campaign, with, Dr. Reverend William Barber, with Cornell West. When I say we, my husband Jim, who's been an activist and who's been involved in activism and in progressive politics for his entire life. And people have to care. And, we keep having these conversations. How do you get people to care about mental health, about systemic racism, about people who have disabilities, about poverty? I mean, how do we do this? And you're right, it is a very, very long conversation. And in this country, we are struggling. We are absolutely struggling. And people are organizing, and people are parts of various different kinds of social movements. But it really does boil down to caring and love. And yet these do not seem to be sexy priority issues in this country.
That is for sure. And I think, too, even to think of what a moral revival would look like, and I appreciate what you're saying there. When I heard you say that, I thought, well, have we had one to begin with? Like, revive implies we're reviving something that once was there. I'm not so certain it's always been there. And I think if you're a part of the Black and Brown community and the Native American community, you would say, it's actually never been there. Systemically, It's never been there. So, and
I would suggest that you and I've become, just aware in the last number of years of a lot of what's going on in progressive politics. And I have to say, before my marriage to Jim, I kind of, you sort of go along and you don't think too much about a lot of these different issues unless they really impact you directly. And Dr. Reverend William Barber, he's doing amazing things. He, along with Reverend Liz Theosaris, they are the founders of the Poor People's Campaign. They're organizing around the country, and this is what they talk about. You listen to Cornel West's words. Again, it's not just about dealing with racism, and it's not just dealing with, African American issues. We're trying somehow, all of us, well, maybe not all of us, and I think maybe more people should be involved in really thinking about what can we do to create a more loving and moral society. And as you say, it is a very long conversation. And but check out Dr. Barber's work and Cornel West's work, and because there are a lot of people out there who are really trying to do some of the things that we are talking about, and that they've been at it for a very long time. And yet it's true. We have a long way to go. But hopefully this crisis, Ross, is really going to be an impetus for people to start to rethink how we are living and what's really important. I hope that's what's going to happen.
I think this year is an impetus, and I'm very hopeful.
Yeah, me too. And, it's interesting is that, once there's a crisis, everybody gets involved. And I guess I'm, thinking further along and wondering what is going to happen after the crisis, this recent crisis, somewhat abates. I mean, for example, mental health services. Right now, the workers, frontline workers, I wonder, are they going to continue to have access to free mental health services after this crisis, calms down?
I think that's a great question. I can speak for the Open Center in saying we are going to continue offering completely free services to not just our frontline and essential workers, but also everybody across New York City. This stress and anxiety, and then the post-traumatic stress that's going to come from this, which is going to last years, sadly. That's an everybody problem.
No, that's for sure.
So we designed New Yorkers for New York for frontline and essential workers and first responders. But I mean, as we designed it, we knew, okay, this needs to be valuable and available to everybody, and it will continue to evolve as new things happen in society. It will continue to grow and evolve, and over time, it will just become our go-to free resource that we open up to everybody and encourage everybody to use it.
I think that's absolutely fantastic. And you may be surprised to hear me say this, but I want you to count me in. I want to be a part of your initiative moving forward. I want people to have access. I want people to have access to great psychotherapy and not have to worry about, can I afford, especially here in New York City, the ridiculously exorbitant fees that so many therapists charge for their 45-minute sessions, for their 50-minute sessions. And of course, that's not to say that there are good therapists around, who are willing and able to work on a sliding scale. But I would really want to be a part of this. So that's another conversation that you and I are going to be able to have at another time.
Well, I look forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I want to talk to Brett, to Brett Cotter, who is one of the 3,100 volunteers who is offering his services and is a member also of the Operation Warrior Shield Board. And Brett is a stress relief expert. God knows we need you, Brett. Specializing in group facilitation, one-on-one coaching, and instructional design. Brett is the founder of www.stressisgone.org and author of The 3 Keys to Managing PTSD, that's post-traumatic stress disorder. So, Brett, welcome to the Ask Beatty Show.
Thank you so much for having me on and including me in such a special group with Ross and Ed. And it's just a beautiful mission, and just hearing your passion, I'm really excited to be here and very honored.
Well, I'm very, very glad to be talking with you. And of course, you asked me, and of course I said yes, that you were going to share with my audience and friends some techniques to help us all de-stress. And God knows we need all the techniques that we can access to help with stress these days. So what are your suggestions? And what can we do right now to de-stress?
Thank you so much for asking that. So for the last decade, I've been teaching something called stress stopper breath work. That's a 3-step technique. It's really simple. Every time you're stressed out, I want you to take your right hand and touch the tension in your body. For me, I usually feel the tension in my chest when I get stressed out. If you're one of those people that have, let's say you're a first responder and the anxiety is just over the top now and you feel it in every part of your body, then you put one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly button. Okay?
I'm doing it right now. Okay.
Great. And you touch the tension. You start breathing deep and slow. That's the second step. Okay? So you're breathing deep and slow, following the airflow in through your nose, and then focusing as it's kind of like circulating throughout your chest, right? And the third step is once per breath, silently saying, I'm okay. And you do that until all the tension goes away. It usually takes about 2 minutes, okay? So this is a very simple technique that puts control back in the person, in the individual, and allows them to shut off their fight or flight reaction by activating their relaxation response. So touch the tension, breathe deep and slow, once per breath, silently say, I'm okay. So that's basically a quick switch, shutting off your stress reaction, turning on your relaxation response. Because our times are so unprecedented, I have more so focused in the last 3 months in helping people vent all the built-up anxiety. So a lot of folks are just feeling generalized anxiety because our fear reaction, our fight or flight is just being triggered over and over throughout the day. And it's just overwhelming. So the first thing I have them do is touch the tension in their body. That's similar. Start breathing deep and slow. And then they identify the emotion that they're feeling. Okay, so if it's overwhelm, if it's anxiety, if it's fear, if it's sadness, if it's loss, they just say, right now, I'm really feeling a lot of whatever the emotion is. And then I have them have a real conversation and just kind of verbalize a few more things that are connected to that feeling. Like, I can't believe I lost my aunt, Gertrude, whatever it is, right? Whatever the loss is, you verbalize it. Whatever your anxiety is connected to that you haven't seen your son, in 3 months, that, you haven't been at work and the bills are piling up. You verbalize it as you're breathing deep and slow, okay? As you're verbalizing the anxiety, you're giving it a voice, and you start to feel those feelings in your chest and your stomach disengage and release from the body because you're actually in touch with them physically, mentally, and emotionally. And you're giving them an outlet. You're like venting that teapot that's boiling over. So right now, with all this stuff going on, with politics, right, the heat there, with the media, the heat there, then you throw COVID-19 on top of it, right? Then you throw this hellacious event that happened in Minnesota and all of the protests happening and the difference of opinions. We're all boiling over at some level. So this is a way just to vent those feelings, to put you down from, let's say, a 10 on the stress and anxiety scale to maybe a 7 or a 6, and now it's more manageable. And now you could use stress stopper breath work to embrace that tension with your breath on a regular basis and reset your central nervous system to, let's say, a 1, 2, or 3 on that stress scale.
Because the good news, and I like to try to share as much good news as possible in the midst of all the crisis, is that people need to know that there are actually things that we can do to alleviate the stress and the depression and the generalized anxiety, et cetera, beginning, with some of the techniques that you're suggesting, and of course talking to people, because, repressing all of these feelings and suppressing these feelings and drinking and eating and not exercising, of course all these things do is, really keep us in a state of depression and anxiety and panic. And, for me, it's always about acknowledge, address, and resolve as best as one can. And I think that these techniques that you're suggesting, I'm doing them actually right now, Brett, as you're talking. It can really make a big, big, big difference. And, of course, it's so important that we find support groups to be able to talk. And I'm glad that you were saying that it's not just enough to meditate, although, for some people that may do the trick, but to be able to vent, to talk, to express, to mourn, to cry, to be angry, to be able to give ourselves permission to express the full gamut of emotion, which also helps to, of course, alleviate our feelings of stress and panic and upset and worry in conjunction with the techniques that you're talking about. So how can people access you, Brett?
Great question. So our website is stressisgone.org. We have a free download of our workbook, 3 Keys to Managing PTSD. It has a year of exercises that bring you through the experiences, chart, and help you chart your progress. And then we also have 2 mobile apps for iPhone and Android. One is PTSD Free, and the other one is Stress is Gone. These apps are very special. They actually predict your stress reaction and guide you through stress stop or breath work in the heat of the moment. So that throws a big monkey wrench into your repetitive stress, which is the most dangerous. Okay, we all have spontaneous stress that pops up if somebody cuts us off on the freeway, but it's that repetitive stress from going into work, being in work, coming home to a toxic environment, financial stress. That long-term stress, that's the repetitive stuff that we have to throw a monkey wrench into, unlock it and release it from our body so that we could find some more freedom and find new ways to spend our time instead of being overwhelmed with that stress. So, the workbook, the 2 mobile apps. I also do coaching over the phone, one-on-one, and I do 3 meditations every morning at 9 o'clock Eastern Time on Ring Central meetings. That meeting ID is 582-811-3947. You just download Ring Central meetings. You log in at 9 o'clock Monday, Wednesday, Friday Eastern Time, and we're going very deep in a 25-minute meditation. That's a great way to start integrating your life with the Stress is Gone method, because we're doing it live, we're doing it together, and I could also answer questions after the meditation's over.
Just think what would happen with all the people who are listening to the show, and you'll be able to take the archives show tomorrow, and you can send it out, to people that you know and people around the world. But just think what would happen if people contacted Operation Warrior Shield, if they actually contacted the Open Center and went to the toolkit and went to your websites. I mean, look at the difference that all of these things could make in people's lives within a relatively short period of time, that they would be able to get on board to actually doing things, not just talking about things and complaining about things, but actually doing things that can change the quality of their lives and the relationships, which is exactly why I wanted to have, Echloeman and Ross Guttler and Brett Cotter, on the show today to give people hope that they're not alone and that there are resources and free resources, which is just unbelievable in these given times in our capitalistic corporate society, that can really, really make a difference. And I'm looking at the clock, and I can't believe that an hour has come and gone. Has it come and gone quickly for you?
Absolutely. This was a very special meeting of the minds, and it takes teamwork. You know, when I was listening to your conversation with Ed and Ross, I was really in awe of the coming together, the like-minded vision of creating something and doing things for the first responders that make our city function and work. And it takes a great team to put this out. So I just, I take my hat off to everybody on the call. It's really an honor to be here with everybody. And I love hearing everyone's passion for helping people. And that's the common bond that has brought us together, the spirit of helping folks that work so hard for our city.
Absolutely. And for me, it's been wonderful to talk with you and, of course, Ed and Ross. And I'm in, you guys. I want you to know that. This is not just a radio 1 hour talk show, okay? Once things settle, we'll get together, and I really do want to contribute and be a part of the process. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. We will continue talking. And again, I look forward to meeting you all, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day, and we'll be in touch, okay?
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Goodbye, everybody. Well, listen, on a lighter note, I was reading the New York Times yesterday. There's a recent article, if we're talking about de-stressing, and the article was New York Times sex toy sale surges during this pandemic, and they were actually talking about how company sales have increased anywhere from 30% to over 200%. So, sex toys, a great way to alleviate stress with a partner, without a partner. But I think that today's show really showed how, coming together, different organizations coming together can really make all the difference in the world. So give yourselves permission to reach out to the Open Center, to reach out to Operation Warrior Shield, to reach out to Brett Cotter, and together we can really, really make a difference in the world. Because what we need to do is that we need every single day, and this is what I say to my patients, that we need to find ways to keep sane and safe in our changing world, and to really, really be aware of doing things that are in our best interest. So, everybody, the time has come and gone, and I want to thank all of you so much for tuning in, for listening, for texting, for emailing me, and I hope every single week. Today was the 301st Ask Beatty show here on the Progressive Radio Network, that I hope every week that there's some little thing that I say, that my guests communicate to you, that can really make a substantial positive difference in the quality of your lives and your relationships. And I want to end the show with my favorite music, which is what the world needs now is love, sweet love. And believe me, we certainly need this now more than ever.